tonight.
This bill is vital to America's future interests.
A bipartisan Senate border bill is meeting blowback from the House GOP. What's in the measure and why Speaker Johnson says it's dead on arrival. And
Donald Trump knows the economy we built is strong and getting stronger.
As the president touts his economic record, new polling reveals the current economy could be a hurdle in his re-election campaign. Plus, we examine the disparity in deaths when it comes to Black women and breast cancer. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Border security faces a fight in the House. Good evening in the nation's capital. I'm Jenna Browder. Tonight, mixed reaction on Capitol Hill to an effort that would overhaul the country's immigration system. Tied to it, foreign aid to Israel, Gaza, and Ukraine. The $118 billion deal has bipartisan support in the Senate, but could hit a wall in the House. CBN Washington correspondent Hillary Powell is tracking its progress. Hillary, where do negotiations stand?
Well, Jenna, House Republicans are not on the same side as the Senate, where Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell says that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson says that he feels like this bill is dead on arrival, and he's going toe-to-toe against lawmakers in his own party. In a rare bipartisan move, a border security proposal released Monday is aimed at bringing order to the chaos at the U.S.-Mexico border. The bill includes $20 billion for immigration enforcement, hiring thousands of officers, and increased screenings for fentanyl and other drugs. The measure adds $60 billion for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel, and $10 billion in humanitarian aid for people in Gaza, the West Bank, and Ukraine. The proposal comes after months of insistence from House Republicans that any Ukraine aid must be paired with addressing the southern border. President Joe Biden is praising the deal, writing, quote, "Get it to my desk so I can sign it into law immediately," end quote. Democratic leaders hope for swift compromise.
We cannot let politics get in the way of passing this legislation. The senators have to drown out the noise of politics and politicians who tell them not to vote for this bill for political purposes. We all know it's the right thing to do.
Election year politics could bog it all down as likely GOP presidential nominee, former President Donald Trump, rejects any border bill, calling it, quote, ridiculous on social media. House Speaker Mike Johnson says the bill doesn't go far enough and that the House will instead vote on a standalone bill for Israel aid. Earlier this month, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled federal agents could remove razor wire placed by Texas officers along the border. Texas has moved to install more razor wire in Eagle Pass. This group of GOP governors traveled to the region Sunday as some consider deploying National Guard members to the border after record attempted crossings.
For stepping up and standing beside, behind, and with Texas in this effort. We're all fighting for a safer, more secure border and country.
Now, a key vote on this measure is expected in the Senate on Wednesday. Jenna?
Hillary, given the human side to this, how are faith leaders weighing in?
Certainly, Jenna, humanitarian aid organization and also a Christian outreach organization, World Relief, is calling this a good faith effort on both sides. And their VP, Matt Soerens, recently spoke to CBN News, and he said that immigration is an issue with many factors.
This isn't a simple issue. There are complicated dynamics here. We want to affirm the dignity of every person made in the image of God, protect human life, especially those fleeing persecution. And we also want secure borders. And we want our government to have an orderly process to be able to distinguish between those seeking to do harm and those seeking to actually escape from persecution.
The group also says that some people approaching the border may be Christians who are fleeing persecution, and that they also have the legal right to try to seek asylum. And they're encouraged that this bill would actually allow lawyers to process asylum requests quicker through the courts, so it wouldn't be as bogged down. They say the immigration crisis is continuing, and also So is faith outreach along the border. Recently, they invited a group of evangelical leaders to the border to see the work that they are doing down there. And also, this has been a priority for evangelist Franklin Graham, who says that he is planning a 10-city tour this spring along the border. Jenna.
All right, Washington correspondent Hillary Powell, thank you very much. Well, an increasingly deadly tit-for-tat in the Middle East. The region bracing for more U.S. airstrikes on Iran-linked groups following 3 more attacks against U.S. and aid coalition forces in Syria over the weekend. The U.S. is promising further action after striking more than 85 targets in Iraq and Syria Friday, including command and control centers, intel hubs, and weapons storage facilities. Since mid-October, there have been more than 160 enemy attacks on U.S. bases or ships in the region. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan issuing this warning to Iran.
From the perspective of Tehran, if they chose to respond directly to the United States, they would be met with a swift and forceful response from us.
Meanwhile, as the war in Gaza rages on, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is promising the war must not end before Israel kills the leaders of Hamas. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Saudi Arabia today for a meeting with Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This is the top diplomat's 5th visit to the Mideast since the Gaza war broke out on October 7th. Blinken and other key players in the region continue to work out a deal towards a ceasefire linked to the release of more than 100 hostages still held captive by Hamas. In addition to Hamas, Israel is targeting Hezbollah in Lebanon. And here at home, a new intelligence warning that the terrorist group could soon strike Americans. Defense experts agree Hezbollah possesses capabilities to attack U.S. interests at home or abroad. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke has the details.
According to new data gathered by U.S. intelligence agencies, the risk of an assault by Hezbollah is rising alongside growing tensions in the region.
Hezbollah is a very real threat to us here in the United States.
Simone Ledeen, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Mideast Policy, says the Iran-backed terror group has a longer reach than many others in the region.
They have sleeper cells here in the U.S. in many cities across the country. This has been documented in multiple court cases. And we have reason to believe that they also have caches where they have stored materials around the country in the event that someone hits the go button to start attacks. I believe they are pretty well prepared. They have been sitting in wait for the order to go for many believe for years now.
As official Washington proceeds with caution due to concern about sparking a wider regional conflict, experts like Ledeen warn we're already past that point.
I think that we collectively are in an expanding regional conflict. And as much as we are resisting it right now, and the current administration is responding to it right now, we are in it. We should be reconsidering our strategic objectives. What's our end game here? And how do we get from here to there? Because right now, here's not a good place for the United States to be. It is not in the U.S. interest to be sort of on the defense.
Since the start of the war in Gaza, American troops in the Middle East have been attacked more than 160 times. Most recently, a drone strike in Jordan, killing 3 American soldiers and wounding 47 others. Also, a close call in the Mediterranean, with a U.S. warship being forced to rely on a weapon system known as the Navy's last line of defense to destroy a Houthi missile only seconds from impact.
We need to be aligning with our partners, the Israelis, the British, and some others, and maybe share some targeting packages and start executing some military operations to make sure that the Iranians, but also our other adversaries who are watching, so that they understand that a red line has been crossed, Americans have been killed, the disruption of global shipping is not something that we are willing to accept, and let's change the dynamic.
Iran remains the common element between all of these players, and Ledeen says the regime has complete control over its proxies. Still, official messaging coming from Iranian leadership following these most recent attacks: we're not after a war with the U.S., but will respond strongly if, quote, an oppressive country or force wants to bully us. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. California Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency as devastating rain floods parts of the state. Mandatory evacuation orders are underway in several Southern California cities.
We're going to experience some degrees of flooding, power outages, other challenges, and so we want to make sure folks are prepared.
Some 38 million Californians are under alerts as slow-moving storm systems dump days of rain. The National Weather Service says the situation could be historic. Hundreds of thousands are without power. And besides the rain, wind has been an issue in some parts of the state, too. Though the system isn't a hurricane, the National Weather Service had to issue hurricane-force wind warnings in some areas. A blow to President Biden on the economy. The latest on the 2024 race for the White House just 2 minutes away. Election 2024, and tonight new numbers that could spell trouble for President Biden. According to an NBC poll, former President Trump holds a slight lead over Biden, 47 to 42%. But when it comes to specific issues, Trump dominates on securing the border and controlling immigration. 57% said Trump would do better. That is a whopping 35 points over Biden. On dealing with the economy, 55% said Trump would do better, a 22-point advantage over Biden. And the president isn't only trailing Trump in a hypothetical matchup between Biden and Nikki Haley. The NBC poll shows Haley leading by 9 points. The same poll shows Trump leading Haley by an astounding 60 points among Republican voters in the GOP primary, a gap Haley vows to close.
People want something different. They want a new generational leader. They want to leave the negativity and the baggage behind and focus on the solutions of the future.
As campaigning continues, the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments Thursday in a case that could decide if former President Trump is eligible to run in the 2024 election. We will have a preview of that case Wednesday on Faith Nation. And joining me now, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, good to see you. So this case before the Supreme Court has to do with January 6th and whether Trump can be excluded from the ballot for his role in that day. Do you really think that the court would go there? And can you imagine the outrage from Trump supporters and conservatives?
Yeah, it would really, there would be a bunch of outrage. And it wouldn't just be from his supporters. I mean, this would be a real dent in democracy if they did it. But look, I don't think they're going to do it. I mean, the numbers would suggest that the Supreme Court is in relatively good conservative hands, if you will. John Roberts is the wild card. He's kind of become the new David Souter. So never quite sure about him, though. John Roberts and this court, the Supreme Court, has been an incrementalist court. They really haven't gone for wide sweeping type changes, though Roe v. Wade obviously was one. But other than that, they typically have not gone there, or at least John Roberts doesn't want to go there. So I don't expect, I expect in essence them to rule in Trump's favor in this. We'll see.
Yeah, let's talk about that NBC poll, David. Trump leads Biden by more than 20 points on the economy. He's up 35 points on the issue of securing the border. How concerning are these numbers for Biden, or is this poll an outlier?
No, I don't think the poll's an outlier anymore. You know, we keep saying outlier, outlier, outlier until, Jenna, you looked inside the numbers as you did there before you came to me. And once again, the economy and immigration, those are the key factors here. Why? Because the economy has not done well. And yes, there are going to be all sorts of metrics the Biden administration will tout. But the truth of the matter is inflation has been up. People understand what's kind of going on in the economy, and they're not too happy. So the economy is an issue. And then, of course, immigration is a huge issue. And remember, Jenna, here's the important point. 2016, Trump ran on immigration. 2020, he did not, because he was doing a pretty good job at the border. 2024, immigration is back. It's a winning hand for Donald Trump.
Yeah. David, this weekend, Trump, he dropped a couple of people as possible VP picks, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem and Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina. Your thoughts on that? And do you think these are the two finalists for him?
I don't know about two finalists. There are definitely two of the ex-finalists. I think Elise Stefanik is in there, though I don't think that would be a good pick, but I think she's there. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders is in the mix as well. I've thought all along from an analysis standpoint that he needs to go with a female. He needs to shore up some of that independent and suburban women vote in the suburbs, the people that are going to just hold their nose and say, okay, I guess if Kristi Noem's on the ticket or Sarah Huckabee Sanders on the ticket, I'll vote for Trump. I mean, I think that's kind of where he needs to go, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. David, it's always good to see you and get your thoughts on the political news of the day. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Jenna.
Up next, Black women 40% more likely to die from breast cancer than white women. Why the disparity and what can be done to stop it? You're watching CBN's Faith Nation. Across the pond tonight, Britain's King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. The announcement coming today from Buckingham Palace. The palace says the cancer is unrelated to a recent hospitalization for a prostate condition, but it was during his treatment for that the cancer was discovered. King Charles is undergoing treatment. The palace says he remains, quote, wholly positive. The announcement comes just one day after World Cancer Day. For the first time ever in 2024, the U.S. is expected to see more than 2 million new cases of the disease. That equals about 5,500 diagnoses a day. This year alone, more than 600,000 Americans are expected to die from cancer. Though deaths from cancer have fallen by 1/3 since the 1990s, when it comes to deaths from breast cancer, there is a big disparity. Black women are 40% more likely to die from the disease than white women. As we mark Black History Month, medical reporter Lori Johnson explains why and what's being done to save lives.
11 years ago, at age 32, Sherry White noticed something unusual.
One day I just touched my chest, and it was actually like right here, and I felt a lump.
She immediately went to the doctor.
You do have to pay attention to yourself and never write things off as, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away.
Who diagnosed Sherry with a fast-growing type of breast cancer.
So I was pretty much planning to die, getting things together for my children.
But she didn't die. Sherry quickly pursued the best treatment available and trusted Jesus.
And without that, you can't do anything. Without God, you can't do anything.
Sherry also credits God for prompting her to start the support group, My Sister's Keeper, so more Black women could be in a better position to experience a successful outcome like hers.
He used this ordeal that was very traumatic to help me to create an organization that will help other women get through cancer.
Overall, cancer death rates have fallen by a whopping 1/3 since the early 1990s. But when it comes to breast cancer, there's a huge racial gap. Black women are 40% more likely to die from the disease than white women. Doctors say there are lots of reasons for this disparity. One is that Black women are more likely to have the type of breast cancer with a lower survival rate due to genetics, lifestyle, or both.
African American women have a much higher rate of what's called triple negative breast cancer, which is a more aggressive form of breast cancer. African Americans tend to get this 2 to 3 times at a 2 to 3 times higher rate than they do in their white counterparts.
This may explain why when Black women receive a breast cancer diagnosis, it's 10% more likely to have metastasized or spread beyond the breast compared with white women. That, plus the fact that breast cancer strikes more Black women at younger ages, many doctors recommend mammograms early and more often.
So therefore, screening, particularly starting screening at least at the age of 40, I think is extremely important. They should do it annually, and that should be true of all Black women.
If a mammogram shows something abnormal, follow-up tests are needed to determine whether it's cancer. Statistics show Black women experience longer wait times for those tests and also the necessary treatment if cancer is found. In addition, fewer Black women receive the type of treatment they need, such as surgery, radiation, and hormone treatments. Dr. Lisa Richardson, the CDC's Director of Cancer Prevention, tells CBN News Black women have fewer social and economic resources, including suboptimal access to medical care that leads to poorer outcomes, including death. Richardson says the center's goal is to increase the number of women receiving cancer screening tests, as well as good quality follow-up after abnormal results. As part of that goal, a CDC program helps women with lower incomes and no insurance get access to these services. Meanwhile, organizations like My Sister's Keeper try to educate and empower women of color.
We have big sisters and we have little sisters. So our big sisters are women who actually went through cancer treatment, been there, done it. And our little sisters are the ones who's recently diagnosed. So our big sisters help to be that coach, if you will.
So while Black women are far more likely to die from breast cancer than others, it doesn't have to be that way. By raising awareness among communities of color and within the medical system, more can survive, like Sherry.
At the end of the day, you will have an amazing story to tell about your accomplishments of an overcoming cancer.
Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thank you, Lori. And still ahead, celebrate Golden Retriever Day in the most perfect place possible. Finally tonight, Golden Retrievers rank among the most popular dog breeds in America. To celebrate this year's Golden Retriever Day, the most fitting town possible held a puppy-filled party for man's best friend. It's called Goldens in Golden. The 4th annual event welcomed thousands of people and Golden Retrievers to Golden, Colorado in celebration of a day honoring the breed. And snow didn't stop people from coming from all over the country to take part in the festivities. Tourism in Golden is typically down around this time of year, so the annual dog celebration helps bring an economic boom to the Gold Rush town. And they got a lot of snow there in the last few days, I think something like 10 inches. So good for them. That looks fun. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.